Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be further discussing the Florida's victory over Tennessee last Saturday. And I'm going to be talking about, instead of talking about what happened in the game, I'm going to talk about the impact of how that game could have um, for Florida throughout the rest of the year and into 2024 and beyond. Now, one thing about the game was that not only was it a great win for Billy Napier and the program, it was by far his I'm not ready to say it was his best victory yet. Like I think the sentiment of it being of people of Gator fans saying that it was his best victory is because it was at a desperate time because of how things had transpired. In his first year, how the year ended throughout the off season, some of the troubles that he had in the off season, and how the game against Utah went. But also because he just had not had a big win since his game against Utah. It's thundering and lightning out, so if you hear noise in the background, that's what that is. But he needed a signature win. Do I think it's better than the Utah one? No, not in my personal opinion. But the victory for Florida over Tennessee was needed because of how many recruits were there. I remember reading there were over almost 2 dozen recruits for the 2024, excuse me, the 2025 class that were going to be there and that were possibly having Florida as a contender. And that victory in the atmosphere that Florida had at the Swamp, the LED lights, and just the Tom Petty song after the end of the third quarter, and Florida fans, um, you know, being so alive for that game, obviously being in Tennessee, it just was just such a big boost for the morale of the recruits that were there to show that hey, there is something with the Gator program right now that there are signs of improvement, and we're about to dive deep into that. So, article by I'm gonna read to you a couple of articles written involving Florida right now in terms of the victory over Tennessee and the signs of improvement that are happening right now with the Gator squad. Florida's upset Tennessee validates the plan. Billy Napier says this is an article written by Chris Lowe of ESPN. Billy Napier sat in his office Friday on the eve of what would end up being his biggest win yet as Florida's head coach. Again, that's up for opinion. Up for a debate, excuse me. He talked about investment, about belief, about building something the right way. Now we need that spark, that's all, something that allows our players to taste a little bit of the fruits of their labor, Napier told ESPN. The Gators didn't just taste those fruits Saturday night the way with the swamp walking the way they did in the old days under Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. They squeezed every bit of juice they could out of the Big Orange, aka number 11 Tennessee, in a 29-16 victory. That Napier called validating in more ways than one. It validates your plan. It validates what you're selling to some degree. The things you continue to harp on, Napier said, who had been on the proverbial hot seat, at least the perceived hot seat, after losing 5 of his last 7 games a year ago, in his only first season. Then to open the season, that heat only ratcheted up among many fan base after an ugly mistake-filled 24-11 loss in the season opener against Utah. Success is a dirty process, and ultimately it's rewarding. You have to go through some ups and downs along the way, Napier said. As validating as Saturday's win was for Florida, it was equally complete. The Gators were dominant at the line of scrimmage. They mixed the pass with the run on offense, and quarterback Graham Mertz was repeatedly able to make key throws on the move. When the Gators surged ahead 26-7 late in the second quarter, they had outgained the Volunteers 282 in terms of total yards. Sophomore running back, I almost said freshman, sophomore running back Trevor Etienne rushed for a career high 172 yards, which included a 62-yard touchdown against Tennessee in the first quarter, which ignited a 26-0 spree. The Gators had that kept the Volunteers on their heels for the rest of the game. And the 26-0 spree he's referring to is the 26 unanswered points in the first half that Florida scored on Tennessee after they drove down the field on their first drive for a touchdown. Just like I said earlier in the week, it was going to be a physical game, and my offensive line came out and dominated for 60 minutes, Etienne said. In the season opening loss to Utah, no Florida running back managed to run longer than 9 yards. Etienne's 62-yarder came against a Tennessee defense that struggled to tackle in the open field for much of the night. And yeah, that was a big indicator on the touchdown run that he's referring to. One of the Tennessee players tried to knock Trevor Etienne down instead of just wrapping him up and tackling him the traditional way. We needed a big play to get the offense going, and it just happened to be me, Etienne said. After building the big first half lead, Napier said he had might gotten conservative in the second half, but he wanted to limit Tennessee's possessions on offense, and that's because of the high tempo that Tennessee played. How Tennessee plays, they play so quickly. Like they get one third down, and all of a sudden they're just rolling out play after play after play. They call plays quickly, and the problem with that is if you're not scoring points constantly, it's going to put your defense at harm. And that was an example in this game. Um, the 16 points marked the third lowest output for the Volunteers since Josh Overhypel arrived in 2021. And two of those three lowest outputs under Josh Overhypel at Tennessee came against Florida in the swamp. It was 14 points in 2021, in which Florida blew out Tennessee 38 to 14, and then last Saturday. And the locale for Napier's first signature win was fitting. This is not his first signature win. That's not true. If you want to debate that it's his best signature win, okay. But to say that it's his first signature win is not true. His first signature win came in his debut against Utah. So that's a narrative that people need to stop pushing. For Billy Napier, this is his second signature. This is his second signature win. I don't really count South Carolina last year because South Carolina got better as the year went on after they lost to Florida, while Florida got worse. So for me, that don't count. It has been 2 decades since the Volunteers last won at the Swamp, a 24-10 win in 2003, which was Ron Zook's next to last season at Florida. It's just all about if we're going to come together or separate. Joe Milton, the third for Tennessee's quarterback said, who threw for 287 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also had an interception that led to Florida's third touchdown. So, man, it's going to talk here about what he said. I really don't care about that. Uh, when Florida wasn't beating Tennessee at the line of scrimmage, Tennessee, the Volunteers were doing a good job of beating themselves, which is an absolute fact. They had 10 penalties for 79 yards, 8 of those on offense. Most stemmed from their inability to deal with the crowd noise, reminiscent of the loss at Georgia last season. Um, that is a good point because Tennessee, on the very first drive in that third quarter, burned 2 timeouts. 2 of the 3 timeouts in the second half of that game, they burned it on the very first drive because the crowd noise was kill. It was doing so much damage to their ability to communicate, for Joe Milton's ability to communicate and change plays with the offense. Another in case that, and there was also a play where the Florida one of the Florida safeties came up from back deep to show that he was going to blitz at the last second, almost near when the play clock was getting ready to end, and Joe Milton was trying to change the play, but he didn't have enough time, so he had to call a timeout. So that's an example of that. Right here, it talks about the brawl. I'm not going to talk about I'm not going to talk about the brawl at all. I'm not going to give that any attention. Uh, as sweet as as the win was for the Gators, the first for Napier over a nationally ranked SEC team. That is correct. He has not been a top 25 conference opponent at all until last Saturday. It was all too familiar for the Volunteers, who have lost 17 of the past 19 meetings in the series. For perspective, Heupel was just 3 years removed from playing quarterback at Oklahoma when Tennessee last won in Gainesville. Volunteers drought spans 6 coaches. Philip Fulmer, who is one of the great who just might be the greatest Tennessee Volunteer of all time, player or coach, right? You have General Nealon, Philip Fulmer, Peyton Manning, Reggie White, Eric Berry, T. Martin. So many good players that have played for the Tennessee Vols over the years, and you know he to in for Tennessee, for him having to struggle in this rivalry against Florida like he did against Florida in the '90s and the 2000s and early 2000s to mid 2000s. For him, I'm pretty sure that's a bitter pill to swallow. Lane Kiffin, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt, and Josh Heupel. Um, Butch Jones was the guy who broke Tennessee's 11-year losing streak to Florida in 2016. But sadly, Tennessee collapsed toward the end of the year, and Florida was still able to win the SEC East. So even when Tennessee every now and then beats Florida, like they did in 2016 and 20, 2022 last year, the success against Florida doesn't really pan out that much because, like I said, Florida still won the East that year, and they lost to Florida for the following 5 years afterwards. And then after Tennessee beat Florida last year, they turn around and lose to Florida this year. A loss like this will light a fire under anybody. Tennessee wide receiver Brew McCoy said, "Me personally, I'm not going to take a lot. I think the rest of the offense will have the same mindset." For Napier, the mindset is that this is just the start. The Gators have the number three recruiting class in ESPN's 24 rankings, and they also have the number three class per 24/7 Sports. And Napier was out on the field talking to recruits an hour after the game on Saturday. Obviously, we still have work to do, but you want to see your people have success, right? Or as William said, it's what we do from here on out that counts. Well, I'm going to talk about that part where Napier is talking to the recruits after the game. Me personally, I love that because it shows that this guy understands that at Florida, you need to keep recruiting, and you need to show recruits that hey, we're all making progressions here with the team. The offense is getting better, the defense is getting better. Freshmen are playing. The crowd is into it. The crowd is bought in to the program right now. They love where things are at right now. So the fact that he went out there and continued to talk to recruits after a big win, just that instead of just celebrating, shows that this man has a work ethic that is needed to be very successful at Florida. And not only is the recruiting so much better under Billy Napier, but so is the defense. So I'm going to slide to another um, article right here. This is right here talks about Austin Armstrong vastly improving the defense relative to what Florida was last year. This hire by Billy Napier is by far his best assistant coach hire, and it's one of the best coaching hires of the 2023 offseason. Austin Armstrong was the defense coordinator for Southern Miss last year. He was originally hired by Nick Saban to coach the linebackers, but then before he could sign on the dotted line, Billy Napier called him up and said, "Hey, do you want to?" Sorry about that. There was somebody's doorbell. Do you want to coach for his defense coordinator instead of just coaching the linebackers? And he accepted. And the results have paid nicely for Florida through the first 3 weeks of the season. So here by Jacob Brenner, who reports for Swamp 24/7, Armstrong defense vastly improved relative to Florida 2022 results. Florida players could feel the change well before they ever took the field to truly test it. The energy in the room was different, and they said it started at the top. There's a lot of enthusiasm to him, and that's what you need. Edge defender Tyreek Sapp said of Florida's first-year defense coordinator Austin Armstrong in the spring. You need somebody that can be that can be that every day because you're not going to be like that every day. But you have a little firecracker as a DC, and he's always ready to pop. At just 30 years old, Armstrong is the youngest coordinator in Power 5 football. What he likes for an experience, he seems to make up with passion. And through 3 games, the Gators have clearly reaped the benefits. Looking no further than the group's performance in its 29-16 victory over Tennessee on Saturday night in front of a raucous crowd that had 91,751 people. Armstrong and the defense of staff had a terrific plan, Billy Napier said. Outside of Tennessee's opening possession, which saw the Gators pass coverage surrender 41 and 11-yard passes on back-to-back plays for a touchdown, Florida's defense performance was tremendous. While its meaning front seven, only came away with one sack, the unit put up consistent pressure on Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton while also containing him, such that his running ability was not a factor. In the second quarter, Florida's pass rush led Milton to loft a pass carelessly in the air, which was intercepted by cornerback Devin Moore. Napier said it was a pivotal moment in the game and that it directly impacted the outcome. The pick was huge, right? Because we affected the quarterback. All the things we talk about all week, protect our quarterback, affect their quarterback, hit the guy, and the ball to go up and get it on the short field and then cash it in. And you're at home, and the crowd gets behind you, and there's a ton of momentum there. Nearly 60% of Tennessee's passing production and 52.8% of his rushing plays came on a combined 10 plays. Outside of that, Florida held the clear advantage. 7 of its 10 highest graded players in the contest, minimum 10 snaps were defenders, according to Pro Football Focus. So, these guys played their tail off, man. Napier said, "I can't imagine playing much better outside of that first possession." Number 25, Florida's overall results through 3 contests demonstrate vast improvement relative to its defensive performance a year ago under the direction of former under the direction of former coordinator Patrick Tony, who just spent 1 year on the Gator staff before accepting a job on the Arizona Cardinals coaching staff. The Gators ranked 10th nationally in a defense, a quarter of the way in total defense, a quarter of the way through the regular season, and have maintained a spot in the top 50, number 49 in third down defense, where respectively they ranked 97 and 129 last year among FBS teams. It's also missing a fraction of the tackles it missed last season when it averaged 10.2 a game, byproduct of acute focus on the matter throughout the offseason and even into preseason camp and weekly practices. The Florida Gators defender said the new coordinator has been a catalyst in their rapid growth. Our defense, we really put all our trust in Coach Armstrong, starting linebacker Scooby Williams said. The way he prepares throughout the week, we trust his game plan. We go out there and we execute. Even Florida recruits have taken notice. I think Coach Armstrong has come in and taken it by storm. 2025 four-star safety Hilton Stubbs, a priority Florida target, told Swamp 24/7, and I believe he was there at the game. The defense has been way better from last year to this year. While he never outright said it, Napier never seemed to anticipate his team's defensive advancements. Look no further than Armstrong's resume. He said, as well as those willing to declare the support of their rising coaching star. Before Southern Mississippi made him the youngest defensive coordinator in the country at just 27 years old. In 2021, Armstrong spent time at the University of Georgia, where he learned under Kirby Smart and now Oregon head coach Dan Lanning. One of the coaching One of Armstrong's coaching idols, Nick Saban, hired him to coach linebackers 3 weeks before he took the Florida's coordinator job. And Saban, Smart, Napier, and Miami head coach Mario Cristobal and others throughout the industry have gone out of their way to sing Armstrong's praises. Saban lauded his scheme after the two faced off against each other in 2021, dubbing it an SEC type defense in terms of ways they played. That's certainly held true so far this season. I feel like everybody's embracing it. Corner Jaden Hill said, just took all of the doubt, seeing the poor defensive play last year, just taking it head on. We've got to change this. It just comes to a point where it's like, this is it. We've got to step it up, and they have done that emphatically. So, and then another thing right here is a article evaluating Florida's freshman class through 3 games, and it talked about how Florida's class from last year has improved. Obviously, the biggest name on offense for the freshmen is Eugene Wilson, but in this article right here, it was written by Nick Marcinko of Gator Country. It talked about the defensive freshmen that have contributed the most, starting with Jordan Castell, TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins, Jakeem Jackson, Cameron James. How all these guys have contributed so greatly throughout the first 3 games of the season. So, and now what we're going to talk about is the outlook for Florida after their victory against Tennessee. So, as you see right here, here's the schedule, FBS schedule, FBSschedules.com. Here it is, Florida's 2023 schedule. Now, I did a video saying that I had Florida going 7-5 this year, but I did not have them beating Tennessee. I had them losing to Utah and Tennessee in their first 3 games. Well, they beat Tennessee, so that's one team. That's one game I'm happy to be wrong about. Their next opponents are Next 4 opponents are Charlotte, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina. And then after their bye week, it's Georgia, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, Florida State. Now, a lot of people have Florida going 5-7 or 4-8 this year. A lot of people outside of the Gator Nation on the internet and on television. Well, Florida right now is already 2-1. If you look at their next 4 games, Charlotte, that's probably a victory. Kentucky, that's going to be a little bit tough. Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Now, I'm confident Florida can beat Charlotte. Like, beating Tennessee doesn't raise or lower my confidence in the Charlotte game whatsoever. Kentucky is going to looks to be a little bit tougher than what I thought they were going to be this year, because their next opponent is Vanderbilt, and they're probably going to be 4-0 when Florida heads on the road. And Vanderbilt's going to come into town. Florida's homecoming on October 7th, and Florida players are going to want revenge on Vanderbilt for losing to them last year. So that's possibly a victory for Florida. And as South Carolina, I don't think South Carolina will be a tough matchup for Florida because of how bad the offensive line is. It's well known how bad the South Carolina's offensive line performed against North Carolina, having -2 rushing yards, giving up 9 sacks and 16 tackles for 4 losses to North Carolina's defense, who is not that good. North Carolina does not have a good defense at all. I mean, Appalachian State went on the road and put up almost 40 on North Carolina's defense a couple of weeks back. So I'm not really sold on North Carolina's defense, and the fact that they pushed South Carolina's offensive line around as um, easily as they did shows that there is a weakness at the Florida defense, which I have read to you, has shown massive improvement, can take advantage of. I mean, South Carolina's best rushing attack this year so far through 3 games came against Furman about a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't even average 4 yards a carry against Furman, and they only had 108 yards. So I'm confident that Florida's defensive line can push South Carolina around a little bit. So right here over these next 4 games, if Florida goes 3-1, I won't be disappointed. They'll be 5-2 like they thought they were, and they got a victory against Tennessee, which I didn't think they would. So 5-2 for Florida would feel real good, and if they can win all 4 of their games after this and go into the bye week 6-1, now you're feeling great as a Florida fan. But this is where the true litmus test comes in my opinion, because you're gonna have Georgia, you're gonna have Arkansas, you're gonna be on the road at LSU, on the road at Missouri, and then you're gonna end your year at home against your in-state rival Florida State. Now, I'm still gonna say Georgia wins that game, but Arkansas to me is not unbeatable, but they're not terrible either. I mean, they just lost last week last Saturday at home to BYU, so they're certainly not unbeatable, and they're certainly not the toughest team in the SEC West. But you do have them at home, and like I said, defensively, I am confident that you can put up a good outing against KJ Jefferson and the way Arkansas plays offense on the road at LSU. I'm still say that's a loss. I mean, people are saying that LSU was overrated because the way they lost to Florida State. Well, LSU just went on the road on a SEC conference opener against Mississippi State and just blew them out to shreds. Blew them out to smithereens. So maybe that shows you how good Florida State is. Missouri's going to be tougher than what I thought with the way they just beat 15th ranked Kansas State, and you're going to be on the road. Not that Columbia, Missouri is necessarily the hardest place in the conference to play at when you got the swamp, as Tennessee fans found that out. Georgia and South Carolina and Alabama and Auburn and Texas A&M. Excuse me, sorry about that. Missouri's going to be a tougher outing than what I thought in the offseason, and I'm still going to have Florida losing to Florida State. Excuse me, but I will say Florida does have a better chance in this game than what I may have thought so in the offseason, because the fact that Boston College can give Florida State a run for their money that the way that they did shows that, you know what, there are some vulnerable spots that Florida can take advantage of against Florida State, and Florida State's going to be on the road at the Swamp, where they're going to be packed. The stadium's going to be packed, and the fans are going to be crazy. A much crazier environment to play in than Boston College, and it's going to be a tough environment for Florida State to come in and play. So, uh, this season, that win over Tennessee could be the momentum changer that the Florida program needs. I had them going 7-5, and maybe that happens. Maybe it still doesn't happen. That the Tennessee victory would mean nothing, but I can honestly say that the outlook for Florida is starting to look up right now, and I could be jinxing my team, but just beating Tennessee the way they did in the next 4 opponents that they have coming up, I mean, I could see Florida going 3-1, and if they go 3-1 and they have a 5-2 record, or they may even win all 4 of their next games afterwards and have 6-1 record coming off the bye week, well then you're starting thinking maybe Florida has a much better shot in this game than what people thought so in the offseason. Certainly against Arkansas and Missouri, maybe a little bit tougher than what I may have imagined, but it seems like Florida could be heading towards an improvement over what they did last year, and I'm excited at the thought of it.